Commander Veltar stared at the data streaming across his console aboard the Harmony's voice. The numbers made no sense. His large silver eyes blinked slowly as he tried to process what his instruments were telling him. For 3 days now, his ship had been picking up signals from a system that should not exist. The yellow star burned too hot and violent. The third planet orbited too close to that deadly radiation, yet somehow impossibly, organized transmissions were coming from that world. Music, voices, mathematical patterns, and something his computer translated as entertainment broadcasts. Science Officer Nixella, confirm these readings again, Veltar said, his melodic voice carrying worry. The pale blue female at the science station ran her delicate fingers over her controls. Her people, the Aquarians, were known for their precise measurements, Commander. The signals are definitely artificial. There is intelligent life on that planet. Veltar felt his breathing chambers flutter with anxiety. In all the centuries since the Zephyrian Collective had formed, they had never found life on a death world. Planets like this third world were considered impossible for any biological creature to survive on. The gravity readings alone showed forces that would crush most known species. How strong is the gravity there? He asked. 0.98 standard. Nixella replied, her voice tight with disbelief. Veltar's legs nearly gave out. Standard gravity was what most civilized worlds maintained, but 0.98 was almost full standard. That meant creatures living there would be incredibly dense and strong. Its own homeworld had only 0.3 standard gravity, and even that felt heavy sometimes, and the radiation levels. Lethal to any known species within hours of exposure. The star pumps out radiation across multiple spectrums. The planet has no proper atmospheric filtering. The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. Every member of his crew was thinking the same thing. What kind of monsters could live in such conditions? Far away on the human ship New Horizon, Captain Jake Morrison was having his own moment of confusion. He stood in the bridge, watching his tactical display show something that should not be there. Lisa, are you sure about this contact? He asked his communications officer. Lieutenant Lisa Carter checked her instruments for the 5th time in 10 minutes. Yes, sir. Unknown vessel, approximately 2 kilometers long, approaching from outside the solar system. They are not responding to our standard greeting protocols. Jake rubbed his chin. 2 kilometers was huge, bigger than any ship humanity had ever built. Their own vessel was only 400 meters long, and that was considered massive by Earth standards. Any weapons signatures? Unknown, sir. Their technology is completely foreign. I cannot identify their propulsion system or energy sources. Jake nodded grimly. For 50 years, humanity had been preparing for this day. First contact with alien intelligence. Every simulation, every war game, every diplomatic exercise had trained them for this moment. But now that it was here, he felt unprepared. Send out warning signals, standard approach protocols. If they do not respond, we follow. Defensive measures. On the Harmony's voice, Commander Veltar was struggling with the same problem from his side. His universal translator was picking up signals from the Deathworld creatures, but the language was harsh and aggressive sounding. They're transmitting something called English Communication Specialist, Tyronus reported. The translation matrix is having difficulty. The language contains many words related to violence and conflict. Veltar shuddered. God. Of course, Deathworld creatures would have a violent language. They probably fought constantly just to survive their terrible planet. What are they saying? Something about warnings and defensive measures? They appear to be threatening us, Commander. The bridge crew exchanged nervous glances. Every species in the Zephyrian Collective had joined through peaceful contact. They had established protocols for meeting new civilizations based on mutual respect and scientific exchange. But these creatures seemed to speak only of warnings and defenses. Sir, the tactical officer reported, they are moving into an attack formation. Veltar looked at his display. The alien ship had indeed changed position, moving to what looked like an aggressive stance. In Zephyrian military doctrine, such positioning was considered a clear threat. On the New Horizon, Jake was watching the alien vessel with growing concern. The massive ship had stopped responding to communications entirely and was now moving in what looked like a flanking maneuver. "Captain, recommend we fire warning shots," advised Commander Paul Bennett, his tactical officer. "Standard first contact. Protocols require us to establish boundaries." Jake nodded. It was exactly what the manual said to do. Show strength, establish that you were not helpless, but avoid actual aggression until proven necessary. Fire 2 warning shots across their bow. Make sure they miss by at least 10 kilometers. The New Horizons' main guns fired. 2 bright pulses of energy streaked across space, passing well in front of the alien ship before dissipating harmlessly into the void. On the Harmony's voice, alarms began screaming the moment the humans fired. "They're attacking us," Tactical Officer Kempter shouted, his voice high with panic. "Energy weapons, high yield." Veltar felt his world spinning apart. The Deathworld creatures had opened fire without any attempt at negotiation. This was exactly the kind of savage behavior he had expected from beings who evolved in such brutal conditions. "Defensive measures," he ordered, his voice steady despite his terror. "Return fire, but aim to disable only." The Harmony's voice responded with its own weapons. Streams of plasma energy lanced out toward the human ship. On the New Horizon, Jake watched in horror as the alien vessel opened fire on them. His warning shots had been clearly non-threatening, yet they had responded with what looked like full weapons fire. "Evasive maneuvers," he shouted. "Return fire, aim for their weapon systems." Both ships began a deadly dance around Jupiter's orbital space. The Harmony's voice was larger and had more powerful weapons, but it was built for exploration, not combat. The New Horizon was smaller, but designed with Earth's military doctrine in mind. Every system was built to handle stress, damage, and combat conditions. The battle was brief, but intense. The alien ship's weapons were powerful, but seemed designed for precision work rather than fighting. Human ships' weapons were built for war, designed by a species that had spent centuries perfecting the art of conflict. Within minutes, both ships were damaged. The Harmony's voice had multiple hull breaches, and its main engines were failing. The New Horizon had taken hits to its communications array and was venting atmosphere from several sections, Dr. Helen Rodriguez, the New Horizon's xenobiologist, had been monitoring the alien transmissions during the fight. As both ships drifted, damaged and dangerous, she made a breakthrough. "Captain, I think this was all a misunderstanding," she called out from her station. "Their language patterns suggest they are as confused and frightened as we are." Jake looked at her with surprise. "What do you mean?" "Listen to this." Helen played back some of the alien transmissions. Even through the universal translator, the tone was clear. Fear, confusion, and something that sounded almost like regret. At the same moment, on the Harmony's voice, communications specialist Tyronus was reporting similar findings. "Commander, I believe the Deathworld creatures may have been trying to communicate, not threaten us." Both ships hung in space, damaged and powerless, as their crews slowly realized that first contact had gone very, very wrong. Neither species had wanted a fight. Both had acted according to their own protocols and cultural understanding. But those differences had nearly led to disaster. As emergency systems kicked in on both vessels, their crews began the difficult work of survival. Soon, they would be forced to work together, whether they wanted to or not. Europa Station, Jupiter's ice moon research facility, was the nearest safe harbor for both ships. Neither species knew that this accident would change the galaxy forever. The emergency docking bay of Europa Station buzzed with activity as both damaged ships limped into port. Commander Paul Bennett watched through the observation deck as the massive alien vessel slowly maneuvered into the largest bay they had available. Even damaged, the ship called Harmony's voice was beautiful in a way that human engineering had never achieved. Its smooth curves and flowing lines looked more like art than machinery. Dr. Helen Rodriguez stood beside him, clutching her translation device and trying to calm her nerves. First contact protocols had never covered anything like this. Two species accidentally shooting at each other was not in any manual she had ever read. "Are you ready for this?" Paul asked her. Helen nodded, though she did not feel ready at all. The translation program is working better now. I think we can actually talk to them without starting another fight. The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss. Commander Veltar stepped through first, moving carefully in what looked like a full environmental suit. Behind him came 3 other aliens, all wearing similar protective gear. Helen immediately noticed how graceful they moved, like dancers floating rather than walking. "Greetings," Veltar said through his suit speakers. His voice was musical, almost like singing. "I am Commander Veltar, of the exploration vessel," Harmony's voice. "We come seeking peaceful resolution to our unfortunate encounter." Paul stepped forward, keeping his hands visible and making no sudden movements. "Welcome to Europa Station. I am Commander Paul Bennett. This is Dr. Helen Rodriguez, our specialist in alien contact. We also seek peace." Through his suit's faceplate, Veltar's large silver eyes studied the humans. They looked smaller than he had expected from creatures evolved on a death world, but there was something unsettling about how easily they moved. No environmental suits, no visible life support equipment. They were breathing the station's atmosphere, as if it were perfectly natural. "Your atmospheric composition," Science Officer Nixella spoke up, her voice nervous. "It contains 21% oxygen. That is a corrosive gas. How are you not being poisoned?" Helen blinked in surprise. "Poisoned? Oxygen is what we breathe. We need it to live." The aliens exchanged worried glances through their faceplates. Nixella checked her instruments again. "Your atmosphere also contains nitrogen, carbon dioxide, and trace amounts of argon and other gases. The pressure is crushing. How do your bodies withstand such conditions?" "This is normal for us," Paul explained slowly. "What kind of atmosphere do you need?" Veltar gestured to his team. "We require filtered air with only 3% oxygen, mostly helium and neon.
Oh.
The pressure must be kept very low, or our bodies cannot function properly." Dr. Rodriguez felt her excitement growing despite the strangeness of the situation. "Can you tell us about your home worlds? We would love to learn about where you come from." Communication specialist Teronis stepped forward. His suit was different from the others, with additional equipment for language processing. "Our worlds are peaceful places. Gentle gravity, filtered sunlight through multiple atmospheric layers, careful climate control. We have spent thousands of years creating perfect environments for life." "How gentle is your gravity?" Helen asked, genuinely curious. 0.2 to 0.4 standard, Nixella replied. "Anything stronger would crush our bones." Paul did quick math in his head. If their standard was similar to Earth's gravity, that meant they lived in gravity less than half of what humans considered normal. No wonder they moved like they were floating. "Would you like to see our medical bay?" Len offered. "Perhaps we can find a way for you to remove those suits safely. We can adjust one of our rooms to match your atmospheric needs." An hour later, the aliens were settled in a specially prepared conference room. The station's life support systems had been modified to provide the low-pressure, helium-rich atmosphere they needed. For the first time, humans could see their alien visitors without the barrier of environmental suits. They were beautiful in an ethereal way, tall and thin, with pale skin that seemed to shimmer slightly in the light. Their limbs were long and delicate, their faces elegant with those large, expressive eyes. They looked like beings made for peace and contemplation. But when engineer Lucy Turner arrived to check the room's environmental systems, the aliens nearly panicked. Lucy was a typical human engineer, practical, direct, and used to working with her hands. She walked into the room carrying a toolkit that weighed 30 pounds and set it down with a casual thump that made all the aliens flinch. "How are the air settings working for you?" she asked cheerfully. Pulling out a wrench that looked massive in the delicate room, Veltar stared at her in fascination and horror. "That metal tool you carry, how much does it weigh?" Lucy looked down at her wrench. "This, maybe 5 pounds. "Why? 5 pounds would require mechanical assistance for us to lift," Nixella whispered. "How are you holding it so casually?" Lucy grinned and demonstrated by lifting her entire toolkit with one hand. "This weighs about 30 pounds. We use tools like this every day." The aliens watched in stunned silence as she made some adjustments. to their environmental system, moving equipment that they could not have budged even working together. Cultural exchange specialist Amy Walsh joined them next, bringing food and drink for both species. She had spent hours researching what the aliens might be able to consume safely. "We prepared some samples based on your atmospheric needs," Amy explained, setting down containers of what looked like liquid nutrients. Very light, mostly plant-based. Compounds that should not be harmful to your systems. She also brought human food for herself, including a simple sandwich and a bottle of water. As she bit into her lunch, the aliens watched with growing alarm. "That's solid matter," Tyrunus said nervously. "You're consuming it directly. Do you not process your nutrients in specialized chambers first?" Amy paused in mid-bite. "Process them?" "No, we just eat food. Our bodies break it down internally." "But the mechanical stress on your jaw structures," Nixella protested. "The force required to break down solid matter. How do your bones survive such trauma?" Amy had never thought of chewing as traumatic before. She demonstrated by biting into an apple, the crisp snap making all the aliens flinch. Dr. Rodriguez arrived. "With a portable medical scanner and a proposal, if you are willing, we would like to exchange medical information. Perhaps we can learn about our biological differences in a scientific way." The medical exchange revealed the truth that would change both species forever. The aliens learned that humans lived on a world with gravity that would instantly kill them, atmospheric pressure that would crush their delicate bodies, radiation levels from their sun that would be lethal within minutes, temperature variations that would freeze or cook them solid. Humans learned that their alien visitors came from worlds so gentle that a strong breeze would be considered a dangerous weather event. Their bones were hollow like birds, their muscles designed for the lightest possible work. They had never evolved concepts like predators, violence, or survival stress because their worlds had never required such things. "Your planet," Veltar said slowly, his voice filled with awe and terror. "How do any of you survive to adulthood?" Paul thought about his childhood on Earth, playing sports that regularly involved impacts that would shatter alien bones. Swimming in oceans that would drown these delicate beings instantly. Hiking in mountains where the thin air alone would kill them. "We just live," he said simply. "It is normal for us." "You are Deathworlders," Nixella whispered, using a term from their oldest legends. "Creatures evolved in conditions so harsh that you have become living weapons." Helen shook her head quickly. "We are not weapons. We're people, just like you. We love, we create art, we explore space to meet new friends." But as the hours passed and more humans came and went, the aliens saw the truth. Every human casually performed feats that would be impossible for any known species. They lifted heavy objects without thought. They moved with reflexes so fast that alien eyes could barely track them. They breathed poison, lived under crushing pressure, and treated radiation exposure as a minor inconvenience. "There are others like us," Amy explained. "Billions of humans on Earth, all living normal lives." Veltar felt his understanding of the universe shifting. His people had spent centuries mapping the galaxy, avoiding death worlds because they believed nothing could live there. But here was proof that not only could life survive on such worlds, it could thrive and build starships, and reach for the stars. "We must contact our fleets," he said quietly. "The Zephyrian Collective needs to know that the galaxy is not what we believed. Neither species realize that their peaceful exchange of information is about to trigger events that would reshape galactic civilization forever." 3 weeks after the first contact incident, Europa Station's long-range sensors picked up massive energy signatures approaching Jupiter's orbital space. Commander Paul Bennett stood in the command center, watching the display with growing concern. 2 separate fleets were coming. Neither looked friendly. Dr. Helen Rodriguez joined him at the sensor station, her face pale. "Paul, the alien fleet has 12 ships, each one bigger than anything we have ever built. The largest one is almost 8 kilometers long." Paul nodded grimly. "And our response fleet?" "Captain Kevin Brooks is bringing 6 ships, including the Iron Eagle. They should arrive within hours of each other." In the medical bay, Dr. Rodriguez had been working with Commander Veltar to establish better communication with his people. The alien commander looked worried as he received updates from his approaching fleet. Admiral Zixthera is not pleased, Veltar explained to the humans gathered around him. She believes your people have taken us prisoner and are forcing us to cooperate. Amy Walsh, who had become the primary human liaison with the aliens, frowned at this news. But we have been sharing our research freely. You have been sending reports to your people about our peaceful intentions? Science Officer Nixella made a sound like musical wind chimes, which the humans had learned was her species' version of nervous laughter. Admiral Zixthera is old and very traditional. She has never encountered Deathworlders before. Reports we have been sending probably sound impossible to her. What kind of reports? Helen asked. Veltar gestured to the human-built chair he was sitting in, specially modified for his lighter body. We have told them that your people can lift objects weighing hundreds of pounds without mechanical assistance, that you breathe corrosive gases and live under crushing atmospheric pressure, that you perform spacewalks in radiation that would kill any of our people instantly. But those are just facts, Paul protested. To Admiral Zixthera, they sound like the fantasies of prisoners trying to frighten their captors into treating them well, Nixella explained. She probably thinks we have been tortured into madness. 2 days later, both fleets arrived at almost the same time. The Zephyrian fleet was magnificent to behold. 12 ships of flowing curves and artistic design, led by the massive dreadnought. Peaceful resolution. The human fleet was smaller, but looked dangerous in a way that alien ships did not. Angular, armored, and built for combat. Fleet Admiral Zixthera was older than any of the aliens the humans had met so far. Her skin had a more pronounced shimmer, and her movements were even more careful and deliberate. She came aboard Europa, stationed with a full honor guard, all wearing heavy environmental suits and carrying what looked like ceremonial weapons. Captain Kevin Brooks arrived at the same time with his own security team. He was a veteran of humanity's colonial wars, a man who had spent his career preparing for exactly this kind of situation. His people wore standard military uniforms and carried practical weapons designed for shipboard combat. The meeting in Europa, station's main conference room, was tense from the beginning. Admiral Zixthera spoke through her suit's translator, her voice carrying centuries of authority. I am here to secure the release of my people, she announced. Commander Veltar, are you and your crew being held against your will? Veltar exchanged glances with his crewmates before answering, No, Admiral. Humans have treated us with kindness and respect. We have been working together to understand each other. The Admiral's large eyes narrowed suspiciously. Commander, your reports describe impossible creatures performing supernatural feats. Such claims suggest either deception or mental distress. Captain Brooks stepped forward, his posture respectful but firm. Admiral, I understand your concern. For your people, I assure you, we have no intention of holding anyone prisoner. Your crew is free to leave whenever they choose. Then explain these reports of humans lifting massive weights and surviving in lethal environments, Admiral Zixthera demanded. Dr. Rodriguez had prepared for this moment. Admiral, would you like to observe some routine human activities? Perhaps. That would help clarify our biological differences. What happened next became legendary in both species' historical records. Maintenance Chief Tony Martinez was called to demonstrate standard human capabilities. Tony was a typical maintenance worker, stocky and practical, with calloused hands and an easy smile. Afternoon, folks, Tony said cheerfully as he entered the conference room. I hear you want to see some regular maintenance work? Admiral Zixthera watched through her faceplate as Tony casually picked up a tool chest that her instruments showed weighed over 60 pounds. He lifted it with one hand while carrying additional equipment in the other. This is routine for you, she asked her, voice barely a whisper. Tony shrugged. Sure, sometimes we have to carry heavier stuff, but this is pretty normal. Communications specialist Nicole Adams joined them next, demonstrating the human communication systems that had been baffling the aliens for weeks. She coordinated between multiple ships, processed dozens of different signal types, and managed data streams that would require entire departments on Zephyrian vessels. How many people does it take to operate your communication systems? Admiral Zixthera asked. Just me, usually, Nicole replied. Sometimes to people if we are really busy. The Admiral looked at her own communication team. 6 specialists with delicate instruments and careful procedures, barely able to handle the complexity of a single conversation. But the real shock came when Engineer Lucy Turner was asked to demonstrate routine EVA procedures. The Admiral and her staff watched through the station's viewing ports as Lucy put on a standard human spacesuit and stepped outside. The radiation levels in this area would kill any of my people within minutes, Admiral Zixthera said, her voice tight with disbelief. Lucy will be out there for about 4 hours, Paul explained. She is repairing some sensor arrays that were damaged during our first meeting. They watched as Lucy moved through space with casual confidence, using tools that weighed more than most aliens could lift, working in radiation that would be instantly fatal to any Zephyrian. She even removed her helmet briefly to check a connection, exposing herself directly to the vacuum of space for several seconds. She will die, the Admiral whispered. No, she will be fine, Helen assured her. Humans can survive direct space. Exposure for short periods is not comfortable, but it is not immediately fatal either. Admiral Zixthera sank into the specially designed chair that had been prepared for her. Her entire understanding of biology and physics was crumbling. Everything her people had believed about the limits of organic life was being casually disproven by these Deathworld creatures. Dr. Amanda Foster arrived with her research on comparative physiology. She had spent weeks studying the biological differences between humans and Zephyrians, and her findings were staggering. Admiral, your people evolved on worlds with gentle conditions, Amanda explained, showing holographic displays of both species biology. Your bones are hollow and light, your muscles are designed for minimal exertion. Your nervous systems respond slowly to prevent damage from sudden movements. The Admiral studied the displays with growing amazement. Humans evolved under what you would consider survival conditions, Amanda continued. Our bones are dense and strong. Our muscles are designed for heavy work. Our nervous systems react instantly to threats. What seems impossible to you is just normal life for us. Your heart, Admiral Zixthera said, pointing to the human anatomical display. It is so large and powerful. We need to pump blood through our bodies under high pressure, Amanda explained. Our gravity compresses everything, so our hearts have to be strong enough to fight that force, and this skeletal structure. Dense bone designed to support our body weight under Earth gravity and resist impacts that are common in our environment. Admiral Zixthara was quiet for a long time, studying the biological comparisons. Finally, she spoke. For 3,000 years, the Zephyrian Collective has avoided Deathworlds. Believed they were barren wastes where nothing could survive. We never imagined that life could not only exist in such places, but could evolve into something so perfectly adapted to conditions we consider lethal. Captain Brooks nodded respectfully. Admiral, our species may have evolved differently, but we share the same goals. We explore space to learn, to discover, and to meet other forms of life. We mean no threat to anyone. I begin to understand, the Admiral said slowly. You are not monsters or weapons. You are simply beings evolved under conditions that created capabilities we cannot comprehend. As both fleets settled into a cautious peace around Jupiter, word began spreading through Zephyrian space about the discovery of the first known Deathworlder species. The galaxy's understanding of what was possible in biological evolution was about to change forever. Neither species knew that this revelation would soon be tested in ways they could never imagine. The emergency communication arrived during what had become a daily, cultural exchange meeting between the human and Zephyrian crews. Admiral Zixthera was in the middle of watching Engineer Lucy Turner demonstrate how humans could work in low-pressure environments when her communication officer burst into the room. Admiral, urgent message from the Collective Council, young Zephyrian officer announced. His musical voice sharp with panic, Admiral Zixthera activated her personal communication device, and a three-dimensional image appeared above the table. The figure was High Counselor Murthak, the oldest and most respected leader in Zephyrian space. His usually calm demeanor was replaced by obvious distress. Admiral Zixthera, you must return to collective space immediately. The Zendari horde has awakened. Captain Kevin Brooks looked at the alien faces around him and saw fear, unlike anything he had witnessed before. Even Commander Veltar, who had become comfortable around humans, went completely still. "What is the Zendari horde?" Brooks asked. High Counselor Murthok turned his attention to the human captain, and Brooks could see ancient terror in those large silver eyes. "Captain Brooks, the Zendari are machines. Artificial beings that were created thousands of years ago by a species that no longer exists. They have been dormant in the galaxy's outer rim for millennia." Dr. Helen Rodriguez leaned forward. "What makes them so dangerous?" "They are designed to destroy biological life," Admiral Zixera explained, her voice hollow. "They see all organic beings as a virus to be eliminated. Every few thousand years they wake up and sweep across the galaxy, destroying everything in their path." A holographic image shifted to show star maps with red indicators spreading like disease across multiple sectors. Entire systems were going dark, their signals simply stopping. "They adapt to any weapon we use against them," High Counselor Murthak continued. "Our peaceful fleets have tried to stop them, but conventional tactics are useless. They learn from every battle and become stronger." Captain Brooks studied the tactical displays. His military mind was already working on the problem. "How many ships do they have?" "Unknown. They build more of themselves from the materials of worlds they destroy. Intelligence reports suggest thousands, possibly tens of thousands of vessels." "Amy?" Walsh, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "What happened the last time they awakened?" "Half the galaxy's civilizations were wiped out," Commander Veltar answered quietly. "The survivors spent centuries rebuilding. Many species never recovered." Admiral Zixera turned to Captain Brooks with desperate hope in her eyes. "Captain, I know we have only just met, but I must ask for human assistance. Your people's unique abilities might be what we need to survive this crisis." Brooks nodded. "Grimly, Admiral, I need to contact Earth's command immediately. This decision is beyond my authority." Within hours, emergency communications were flying between Jupiter and Earth. President Susan Taylor convened an emergency session of the Global Defense Council while General Richard Kane mobilized humanity's deep space forces. The debate on Earth was intense but brief. Humanity had spent decades preparing for alien contact, but they had never imagined being asked to help defend galactic civilization within weeks of first meeting other species. "We are talking about committing our entire space fleet to a war against an enemy we know nothing about," argued Defense Secretary Martin Cole. "But if these Zendari succeed in destroying galactic civilization, we will be next," countered General Kane. "Better to fight them alongside allies than face them alone later." President Taylor made the decision that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. "General Kane, you have authorization to deploy our forces in support of the Zephyrian Collective. This is humanity's introduction to the galactic community. Let us make it count." Back at Europa Station, Commander Sarah Lawson was leading the advanced scout mission to observe Zendari tactics. Her ship, the Swift Arrow, was one of humanity's newest scout vessels, designed for deep space reconnaissance. "Remember, we are observers only," she told her crew as they approached the battle zone. "We gather intelligence and report back. No heroics." What they found in the Kepler system horrified even battle-hardened human military personnel. The Zendari ships were unlike anything in human or alien experience. Dark, angular vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with mechanical precision, coordinating attacks with inhuman efficiency. "Jesus," whispered Lieutenant Colonel Matt Pierce, Sarah's tactical officer. "Look at what they did to that planet." Through their sensors, they watched as massive Zendari harvester ships stripped an entire world down to its core, converting the raw materials into new war machines. What had once been a living planet was being transformed into instruments of death. "Captain, I am reading energy signatures from the Zephyrian Defense Fleet," reported sensor specialist Danny Wells. 12 ships approaching from the inner system. They watched the battle unfold with growing dismay. The Zephyrian ships were beautiful and advanced, but they fought like beings who had never experienced real war. Their formations were elegant, but impractical. Their weapons were precise, but lacked the raw destructive power needed against adaptive enemies. The Zendari machines analyzed each Zephyrian tactic within minutes and developed counters immediately. Energy shields that had never been penetrated before became useless as the machines adjusted their weapons. Maneuvering patterns that had worked for centuries were predicted and countered. "The alien ships are getting slaughtered," Matt observed grimly. "Their weapons are barely scratching the enemy hulls." "But look at how the machines fight," Sarah noted. "Everything is calculated, predictable. They are adapting to Zephyrian tactics, but those tactics are based on fighting other peaceful species." She was already forming ideas about how human military doctrine might fare against such enemies. Humans had spent centuries perfecting the art of war against other humans, beings who were just as unpredictable and adaptive as they were. "Danny, are you recording everything?" "Yes, ma'am. Every tactic, every weapon, every response pattern." As they watched, the last Zephyrian ship in the system was destroyed. The Zendari fleet immediately began moving toward the next inhabited system, their formation perfect and unstoppable. Sarah ordered her ship back to human space at maximum speed. What she had seen would change everything about how this war would be fought. General Richard Kane received Sarah's report in his command center on Luna Base. The intelligence was both disturbing and hopeful in unexpected ways. "So these machines adapt to conventional tactics," he mused, studying the battle recordings. "But their adaptations are based on fighting species that avoid violence whenever possible." "Exactly, sir," Sarah confirmed via video link. "The Zephyrians fight like they are trying to minimize casualties and damage. Their weapons are designed to disable rather than destroy. Their tactics assume their enemies think the same way. But we do not think the same way," Kane said with a grim smile. "We evolved fighting each other. Every human military doctrine assumes the enemy is trying to kill us as efficiently as possible." Lieutenant Colonel Pierce joined the discussion. "General, these machines have probably never encountered anything like human combat philosophy. They are programmed to counter civilized warfare, not the kind of total war humans specialize in." Kane nodded, his strategic mind already working on possibilities. "Sarah, in your opinion, how would human forces perform against these machines?" "Sir, I think we might have significant advantages. Our ships are built to take damage and keep fighting. Our weapons are designed to destroy, not disable. Our tactics assume the enemy is adapting to counter us, so we plan multiple layers of deception and misdirection. And most importantly, sir, humans are unpredictable in ways that machines might not be able to counter. We make decisions based on intuition, emotion, and split-second judgment calls. We take risks that logical beings would never consider." General Kane made his decision. "Prepare the fleet for immediate deployment. We are going to show these machines what Deathworlders can do when their galaxy is threatened." As humanity's warships began moving toward the crisis zone, neither species realized they were about to demonstrate that some things in the universe were more dangerous than machines designed to kill everything they encountered. They were about to discover what happened when Deathworlders went to war. The combined human-Zephyrian fleet gathered at the edge of the Kepler Nexus, a star system that served as the gateway to the galaxy's core worlds. If the Zendari horde captured this system, they would have a clear path to destroy billions of lives across hundreds of civilized worlds. General Richard Kane stood on the bridge of his flagship, the battleship Defiant, watching the tactical displays show the approaching enemy. 67 human warships hung in formation alongside 43 Zephyrian vessels. It looked impressive until you considered they were facing over 300 Zendari machines. Admiral Zixthera-esque voice came through the communication system. From her ship, the Peaceful Resolution. "General Kane, our long-range sensors show the enemy will arrive in approximately 6 hours. Are your forces ready?" Kane looked around his bridge at his crew. These were men and women who had trained there. Entire careers for moments like this. Fighter pilot Emma Clark was running final checks on her squadron. Sergeant Major Alex Thompson was preparing his boarding teams. Commander Rachel Stone was coordinating the fleet's tactical systems. "Manral, my people are ready," Kane replied. "Remember, when the fighting starts, Your ships should focus on support and rescue operations. Leave the direct combat to us. General, with respect, you are heavily outnumbered. Our ships may not be designed for war, but we will not abandon you to fight alone. Kane smiled grimly. The Zephyrians were learning about human concepts like loyalty and sacrifice. Admiral, we appreciate that. But trust us to handle the fighting. We have been preparing for this kind of battle our entire lives. The Zendari fleet arrived exactly on schedule, their dark ships moving in perfect formation like a swarm of mechanical death. They immediately began scanning the human vessels, their artificial intelligence systems analyzing these new opponents. Emma Clark launched with the first wave of human fighters. Her squadron of 12 pilots dove toward the enemy formation at speeds that would have killed most organic beings. The G-forces from their combat maneuvers were crushing, but humans had evolved. On a world where such stresses were part of daily life. "This is Lightning Leader," Emma's voice crackled over the radio. "Beginning attack run on enemy formation." The Zendari defensive systems opened fire with precise calculated shots designed to destroy the small human fighters. But Emma and her pilots flew like no organic being the machines had ever encountered. They pulled turns that should have been impossible, survived impacts that should have been fatal, and kept fighting even when their ships were damaged. "Lightning 3 is hit," reported one of her pilots. "Lost main engine and half my weapons." "Systems, can you still fly?" Emma asked. "Hell yes, ma'am. These bastards picked the wrong species to mess with." The damaged fighter continued its attack run, using manual controls when the electronic systems failed. Guided by human reflexes that responded faster than machine calculations, on the Defiant. General Kane watched as the main battle began. Zendari ships concentrated their fire on the human vessels, expecting them to retreat or be destroyed quickly, like the Zephyrian fleets they had fought before. Instead, human ships absorbed incredible damage and kept fighting. The Iron Eagle took direct hits that punched holes through 3 decks, but Captain Kevin Brooks kept his ship in the battle. Engineer Chris Martin and his damage control teams worked in conditions that would have required complete evacuation. "On any other species vessel, K engineering to bridge," Chris reported over the intercom while working in a compartment filled with radiation and toxic fumes. "We have lost main power to weapons deck 3, but I can reroute through the auxiliary systems. Give me 10 minutes. Chris, that compartment is flooded with radiation," Captain Brooks warned. "Yeah, I noticed. Good thing I brought extra coffee." Chris out. The Zendari machines began to realize something was wrong. Their tactical programs were designed to fight logical opponents who retreated when damaged, who prioritized crew safety. Over mission objectives, who fought according to predictable patterns, humans fought like they were already dead and just trying to take as many enemies with them as possible. Sergeant Major Alex Thompson led his boarding teams onto damaged Zendari vessels, fighting in the hard vacuum of space and radiation levels that would kill most organic life within minutes. His teams moved through the enemy ships like they belonged there, using the machine's own environmental hazards as weapons. "Alpha Team, we are inside their command section," Alex reported through his helmet radio. "Heavy radiation in here, but nothing we cannot handle." His team planted explosive charges throughout the Zendari ship while the machines tried desperately to seal hull breaches and restore life support systems. They never thought any biological creature could survive without. "Charges set. All teams, get clear. We are blowing this thing in 30 seconds." The explosion tore the Zendari command ship apart from the inside, sending debris spinning through space. But Alex and his teams were already moving to their next target, using jetpacks to cross the vacuum between enemy vessels. Admiral Dixera watched from her command bridge in amazement and terror. The humans were fighting in conditions that would instantly kill any Zephyrian, treating deadly radiation and crushing GI forces as minor inconveniences. "Admiral," her science officer reported, "the human ships are taking damage that should destroy them, but they continue fighting. Their crews are working in environmental conditions that our sensors register as completely lethal." "I am beginning to understand," the Admiral whispered. "They are not just physically adapted to Deathworld conditions. Their entire philosophy of war is based on surviving the impossible. The tide of battle began to turn when Commander Rachel Stone implemented her final battle plan. She had studied the Zendari tactical patterns and noticed something crucial. The machines adapted to damage by rerouting power and resources to maintain optimal fighting efficiency. All ships. This is Stone. Execute Plan Chaos. Deliberately damage your own vessels according to the predetermined patterns. What happened next became the stuff of legends throughout galactic civilization. The human ships began deliberately creating radiation leaks, atmosphere breaches, and system failures that would force any sane crew to abandon ship immediately. But humans were not sane by galactic standards. They were Deathworlders. Fighter pilot Danny Wells flew his damaged interceptor directly into a Zendari battleship's main weapon array, ejecting at the last second and surviving the explosion by pure luck and the kind of reflexes that only evolved. On worlds where split-second decisions meant the difference between life and death, engineering teams worked in flooded compartments, toxic atmospheres, radiation fields that registered as instantly lethal on every sensor the Zephyrians possessed. They kept human ships fighting long after any logical crew would have surrendered. The Zendari machines found themselves fighting an enemy that thrived in conditions they used as weapons. Their tactical adaptations became useless against beings who treated environmental hazards as normal working conditions. Captain Danny Wells of the destroyer Vengeance made the final decisive move of the battle. His ship was heavily damaged, leaking radiation and atmosphere, most of his crew working in conditions that would kill any other species within minutes. General Kane, this is Wells. My ship is finished, but we are still mobile, requesting permission to ram the Zendari command nexus. Kane hesitated for only a moment. In human military tradition, such sacrifices were honored, not prevented. Granted, Captain, it has been an honor serving with you. Danny aimed his dying ship directly at the central Zendari command vessel. As he flew through space filled with weapons, fire, and debris, his crew continued working to give him every bit of power they could manage. All hands, this is the captain, Danny announced over the ship's intercom. Today we show these machines what happens when you threaten our galaxy. Today we show them what Deathworlders can do. The Vengeance struck the Zendari command nexus. At full speed, explosion was visible from both fleets as two massive vessels were destroyed in a flash of atomic fire. With their command nexus gone, the Zendari fleet began to falter. Their perfect coordination broke down. Ships that had fought with machine precision suddenly became confused and vulnerable. The remaining human ships pressed their advantage, continuing to fight in damaged conditions that would have been impossible for any other species. They pursued the retreating machines all the way to the system's edge, ensuring that none escaped to threaten other worlds. When the battle finally ended, Admiral Zixtera surveyed the aftermath with awe. The human fleet was barely functional. Every ship was damaged. Many were held together by emergency repairs and sheer determination. By any logical standard, they should have been destroyed hours ago. But they had won. The first Deathworlder species had fought their first galactic war and saved civilizations that had existed for thousands of years. General Kane, Admiral Zixtera said, as both fleets began rescue and recovery operations on behalf of the Zephyrian collective and all galactic civilization, I offer humanity full membership in our community. Not as junior partners or primitive newcomers, but as our protectors and defenders. Kane looked around his damaged bridge at his exhausted crew.